getting a friend to help you like find your route, because it's always the anticipation of doing something new for the first time that's scarier than actually doing it. And once you do it, I feel like people are a little more emboldened to continue on. So get a neck gaiter and a friend to show you which way to go. In my 20 years, I've had a lot of close calls. I've had a lot of incidences. I also used to ride on a cycling team where we were more out on the country roads a little more. There's a lot of aggression. There's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of throwing of things out of cars. I mean, I was by Grant High School and had like a milkshake thrown at me one time. That same area was where I was hit one time. I was coming through. So there's like, and they've actually put a lot of infrastructure into this intersection probably because of incidences like this. But I had the green. I was coming on a downhill. The car that was parked at the light had a red light. They were going to turn left. And so like right before I got to the intersection, the light turned green. The first car was like, oh, I'm going to turn left before she gets across the intersection. The second car can't see you. So the second car started to turn as well. And that's when I was like, had to like rip around, hit the passenger side of their door, went down in the intersection. Like, luckily wasn't hurt. The person stopped. We exchanged numbers. Like, everything actually was okay, but it was really traumatizing. You just don't realize how vulnerable you are. And like, I think it's upsetting when people are driving and they are emotionally driving. They're using their car as an extension of themselves. And I'm like, you make one small mistake and it's my life. And how are you gonna feel for the rest of your life that you have killed somebody because you were angry that you couldn't go as fast as you wanted to in this one particular instance or something. So those days suck. Yeah. And those are hard instances to go through. And like, I just wish if people rode more, I feel like they would understand how scary it is to have somebody come so close to you or rev their engine past you or yell or just be aggressive in general because you have no protection. I have been here for 20 years now, so it's before a lot. I moved, I was living in LA before this, and I stopped driving when I got here, so I actually haven't had a car since I've lived in Portland for the last 20 years. And once the greenway started going in, like you started to see like signs and like things pointing, and you're like, what is that? What is that? I just think I think it's such a good piece of infrastructure because you have people who are trying to get from here to here that maybe don't ride very much, and you have like directional signs that tell you if you want to get to Gateway, you go this way. If you want to get to Northeast, you go this way. You know, and then all of the painting and everything like that. I just think it's helpful for new people. I think it's helpful for, you know, with all the stop signs turned away so that you can use that as your main street. It really helps people stay off of the driving streets a lot more because you're not having to stop every light, you know, so you're not going to go on Sandy Boulevard. You're going to go like, you know, on a street that's for you where you can ride pretty consistently without stopping. I think finishing the infrastructure, I think there are a lot of times when you're guided along certain routes and they end. They just stop and there's nothing. And like, I've ridden enough to know that in 3 blocks or so I can pick up another bike lane or something there, but somebody else, like, there's a section of Sandy Boulevard where there's literally like maybe 2 blocks of bike lane, and you're like, why is that even there? You know, so it's like bridging the gaps of what's already there, I think, is really important because a lot of it just kind of skips around and doesn't, like, you just kind of feel abandoned. You're like, I don't even know where to go anymore. So I think linking what's already there and trying to figure out, I mean, it's, you know, provocative to say to try to figure out a way to separate cars from bikes a little more, but I think Williams is an interesting corridor where you're riding on the left-hand side. That's a traffic pattern that's not normal for people. I think having some kind of posts or some kind of something to help separate things a little more on those corridors where it's like different for people like that. I think a lot of the painting of the infrastructure at certain corners, you know, like I was riding downtown the other day, there are actual like posts and green paint to encourage people with a no turn on red sign that lights up to tell people like don't go this way. Like I think people really need, I mean, and even when I was sitting there, somebody still made a right-hand turn even despite all of that. But I think more of that is really helpful, especially for people who don't maybe drive in Portland all the time. I think drivers don't understand like how vulnerable you actually are on a bicycle, and if you're at a turn and they're thinking, oh, well, we can just go right, and you're actually getting your green light, like that's such a flashpoint, just that particular situation, like that I think the visual is very helpful. I think it frustrates some people, but I think it's necessary. I think it's educational. I think the scariest thing is to do it the first time. I think figuring out your route, like if you want to ride to work, I think finding somebody, or even like Google Maps isn't always the greatest, but finding out what your routes are to work and like being able to figure that out the first time, because the first time is always the scariest, right? Like after that, the fear of the unknown is kind of taken out. So I think kind of being able to know where you're going in that way, and I think especially when the weather comes, being able to have the right gear to like make yourself more comfortable. Like have to have gloves. Like I find neck gaiter, like especially like a wool one, I wear so much of it, even if your hands are cold and everything else is wet and cold, like if this part of you is comfortable, then you're like solid. So being able to have some decent gear. I ride so much because I don't have a car. So there's days, it's days like this where it's beautiful, you see other people out. I love I love the days when you see other people actually getting out on your bike. It's nicer when it's on the weekend when they're not like, everybody feels like they're being nicer to each other, you know, they're like not being mad about people going slow, and like everybody's using the bike lanes, and I think good weather definitely helps. But yeah, I do so much riding around here that there's definitely these are the good days. These weather days are the good days. Everybody feels like they're in a good mood and patient, and like there's more people out too, which I feel like the more cyclists there are out, the safer it feels. Safety in numbers, you know.